Dead Space review by MandaloreGaming. As somebody that's done 3 consecutive annual Dead Space streams with the 4th incoming, curious what Mandalore has to say on one of my all-time favorite games. It really is that atmospheric. The spooky. Oh my god, we'll see if that gets
Halloween
copyrighted.
is right around the corner, but instead of checking out an indie horror title like I did last year, I thought this year I'd look at a more mainstream one. My first encounter with Dead Space was the commercial for it. I knew nothing about it, but man, did it draw me right in.
I actually missed the commercial for this. I hadn't seen any Dead Space commercials till Dead Space 2. I remember watching this on YouTube though. Oh, that quality. Mwah, chef's kiss. Man, we've really come a long way with 720p, 1080, and 4K.
It would just be a long shot of a spaceship area and then bam, cut to violence. I think
it sets the tone up very well though. There is that build up. And then you have the action. It was a very good trailer on rewatch.
Curious, and I ended up buying it not long after that. So what's this all about? And how does it hold up 9 years later? To start with the how does it hold up part, I need to talk about the PC port. Unfortunately, this game is possessed by the devil.
Okay, it really is. I'm glad that he's also experiencing issues because I've thought my copy has been cursed for years. It's been absolutely insane the amount of stuff that's happened on stream with it.
I have a few tricks to exercise him. Dead Space is a console port, and it has a lot of frame rate specific issues. The input time and the speed of mouse movement are affected by the frame rate, so your movement can feel different depending on the room you're in. To make matters worse, the better the game is running, the more physics will start to break.
Oh, that makes sense now. Yeah, I think I do run it on 60.
Physics issue can kind of be solved by using the in-game VSync option. But if you use this, then your game is locked to 30 frames per second, and the mouse issue gets even worse. You would think that locking the frame rate would fix that, but it doesn't. But if you leave it off, you might run into even stranger problems, like not being able to go through one of the first doorways in the game. So do you want 30 FPS with awful input lag, or do you just want kind of bad controls with the game going haywire?
I mean, I honestly like some of the game going haywire, but this room actually always made my eyes hurt a little bit when I streamed it. This is the mining deck, I believe. It always made my eyes hurt because of the flashing.
Recommend neither. Download the Dead Space mouse fix, and most of your problems go away.
Heyo?
Turn off in-game VSync. Force it with your driver control panel, then cap it at 60. Now
Cool. I know what I'm doing this coming year. Thank you, MandaloreGaming. You have been informative in the first 1 minute 44 seconds of your video. You absolute legend. As someone that also enjoys Dead Space.
Can aim without feeling like you're in a syrup bottle, and a lot less people will be flying through the floors.
Amazing.
Now we can get into the game proper, and I'll take it from the top. You play as a ship engineer named Isaac Clarke in the far future. He's part of a repair team sent to a mining ship. The USG Ishimura was mining a planet when Sunlight stopped communicating with its corporation. So instead of an action hero or a soldier, you're essentially playing as an employee of Space Geek Squad. When things go wrong...
It kind of reminds me of the company from the Aliens franchise. You know how like the company sent them to the planet. Yeah, it was the planet in the first one, right? And then the aliens, they had to go down to that colony, right? But it's always referred to as the company. Very similar vibes.
You end up stranded on the ship. It turns out they have a bit bigger problems than the broken Wi-Fi, so it's up to you to find out what happened and fix the Ishimura. That's all I'm gonna say about the plot for now. Let's look at the visuals.
Isaac, can you go fix this? Mate, I'm an engineer. Yeah, you know how to fix everything, right? I don't think this is in my pay grade, but I can try.
Space looks incredible.
Yes.
I was actually a bit shocked at how well it held up. This is a port of a 360 game that looks great.
Yeah.
So what went right? 2 words. Lighting and effects.
Yep.
I love this one bit where you're on a gondola, and the fog moves away and reveals all the enemies.
From my understanding, the fog actually obscures the loading. From my understanding on the back end, kind of that. It's not that games used to be perfect, because, oh my god, games were not perfect. There are so many. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and they had to utilize less and get more out of it. So yeah, I mean, it's going to look good when you see this fog roll back and you see the necromorphs just going bang at you, right? It's going to have a different feel. Whereas we have modern technology where we don't necessarily need to play these smoke and mirror tricks.
It's just great. Using smoke and darkness to hide shortcomings wasn't a new trick, but they mastered it. The few times there are brightly lit areas, you can tell how low res the textures are. But this doesn't happen often. It is a nearly decade-old game, but unless you're staring at walls up close, I think it holds up on a technical level.
It does.
The attention to detail with the effects is fantastic. Speaking of attention to detail, I have to talk about the art style, especially with how the heads-up display works.
Hold still, Isaac.
It's minimalistic, and it provides all the information you need. I will forever praise Dead Space's HUD design.
I'm syncing up everyone's rig with the ship.
Because that's your health bar.
Filling up.
Yep.
Where other games have some kind of health bar, it's just right there on your body.
Yep.
If you want to read some logs, you just pull it up in front of you. No going into a menu or anything like that.
Is that the crew?
Yeah, just move the camera around. It's really there. How much?
I know the remake, because the remake didn't really have those. Actually, the remake has a really funny thing where you can actually replace the video files because the video files are stored in a specific location, which is actually kind of funny. The air counter, yeah, right there. It's everything you need. And when you aim the weapon, it shows your ammo counter. It is perfect.
There's left. The suit
for
will
the
tell
situation.
You. Where's the objective? The suit will tell you.
Yep.
If you're really lost, you could always use the 3D map. That's pretty handy. Check out the inventory. Isaac follows along with whatever you look at.
We saw the 3D map for like Metroid.
Weapon? The gun will tell you.
Mm-hmm.
This might not seem like a huge deal, but it does wonders for helping to draw you into the setting.
Yes.
All that video game UI stuff is just a part of their world. I mean, if you're working at a Harris Teeter, you probably don't need to wear a health bar unless it's, you know, the Sunday rush. But what if you worked here? A lot can go wrong in space.
Yeah.
Either some kind of solar flare or a big rock knocks out the AT&T communication tower. Frank's been awfully still. I hope none of those micrometeorites hit him. Well, now you don't have to wonder. You'll know. You could be saying that's a stretch because there are better ways to do this, but they sell this to you right from the start.
I would argue it's the most effective way for this specific game. I'm sure you could argue, well, this technically from an artistic standpoint could fit a little better, but it is iconic, it is minimalistic, and it is effective. It does not pull you out of that immersion.
Walk aboard, there's a big display telling you how it's the oldest mining ship in the fleet and how happy the company is you're there. If you've worked in retail or a call center, you already know what's up.
Yeah.
Hey, my spacesuit kind of looks like a pair of pajamas with some plating on it.
Kinda.
Did they cut some corners? Then you find the limb replacement lab. They want to keep you working. They're growing fetuses to harvest the stem cells for this, I think. Concordance Extraction isn't a good company. You're not getting workplace insurance. You lost it when you dragged that ladder that one time.
Yep.
Details. The ship and everything on it has a really cool industrial look.
Wait, are you not supposed to drag the ladder? Not that I would have, not that I would have done that. Not that I would drag a ladder across the floor. No, sir. Especially if that's against OSHA. You're not allowed to drag the ladder across the floor, though.
I've seen Ishimura compared to the Nostromo from Alien, and I agree. There's a lot of inspiration from that there, though Dead Space certainly looks a bit more modern. I was really satisfied with how they presented the ship. It seems practical, like this bathroom. Here's where they grew all their food. Here's where they process asteroids. Here's where the crew blew off some steam.
Yeah.
Some all-American zero-G hoopers. In case you couldn't tell already, I really like the world of Dead Space. I think it's unique.
Oh, it's great. It is probably one of the best IPs that is incredibly underrated because we had like back in the early days of mobile gaming, like when games were still starting to come to phones, like we had like Dead Space Mobile. I think it was like Dead Space Android or something like that. We had Dead Space Mobile. We had a Wii version, Dead Space Extraction, which I absolutely love, and I need to go back through. It's such a good game because it builds up to Dead Space 1. And you have Dead Space 2, which even the DLC brought back like more elements to it. It's so good. And then Dead Space 3 kind of happened, and I don't like to talk about it. The one run I've done, I don't like to talk about it.
It's also very well animated. I love how tense Isaac looks, and he's always suspiciously looking around. I can't really say I blame the guy.
It's because the imposter's about to jump out of that vent. Corned beef snake! That's for those of you that were around when I streamed Dead Space Remake, this is in fact the corned beef snake. You're welcome.
The sound of the game definitely matches the visual quality. This goes double for some of the enemies.
Yeah, the dividers. The Guardians are metal AF because they're still technically alive. Yep. Oh, fuck the pregnant Necromorphs, man. So many deaths. The hands!
Just the sound of Isaac breathing is great for building up tension. The sound changes depending on how much health or air you have.
I will say my favorite is still probably Dead Space 2, but I understand and I will fully recognize that that's an action game versus a horror game. When this is technically Dead Space is a thriller game because you can technically fight back versus horror is something like Outlast where you can't really fight back, right? Or Amnesia, right? So I would say Dead Space 2 is probably the most refined, but Dead Space 1 is just iconic. Yeah, I hated this room. He's gonna suffocate. 10 seconds opening that door. Nope, not gonna have time to depressurize.
Exiting zero gravity.
And dead. That was close. Yeah, you start to limp when your rig gets low too. So it's really immersive in that aspect too.
So all around, this is some top-notch presentation.
Yeah.
There's a bit more to touch on there, but that weaves into the gameplay. So let's get started. Dead Space is a third-person shooter first and foremost, but they changed it up a bit for most shooting games by not having you aim at the center of mass or the head. Instead, you go for the limbs.
Yep.
These are necromorphs, not zombies. To put it simply, every single cell in this thing wants you dead. I'm not sure this is really killing them. The game's pretty adept at
It is not. I think we have, isn't it? There's confirmation from like the movies and the extended lore, right? When you quote unquote unalive a necromorph, right? And you sever the limbs, right? And it just goes inanimate. It's because it can't chase you at that point. As long as the marker signal is active in the vicinity, it can still recombinate itself. It can still come out of the corruption in the wall, flush SCP, flush that hate style. You only incapacitate necromorphs unless the marker is taken out of range or the marker is dealt with. You do not actually get rid of necromorphs, and that's honestly a game balancing thing. If you had to deal, if you took them down in game, right, and they just pop back up, or you couldn't actually deal with them, I mean, it turns into like, Mr. T from Resident Evil, or any other game where there's just an invincible enemy and you just kind of have to run from them, right? In order to convey what Dead Space did, they had to make sure you could decommission quote unquote necromorphs to be able to deal with them.
You this. All the enemies have very dangling or kind of lanky limbs to aim at.
Yeah.
Chopping off the head won't kill them.
Nope.
If anything, it just pisses them off.
Yeah, it does. They just go into
It's
Zerk
simple to learn
mode.
through trial and error, but Dead Space doesn't do that. And I actually kind of hate how they introduced it to the player. This is right above your first weapon. Not exactly subtle.
It's not exactly subtle. It's one of those that I can kind of... Well, yeah, it also does that, right? So shoot for extra damage. I mean, it tells you that in the tutorial. I think as a minimalistic tutorial, it's perfectly serviceable.
Definitely can't miss the big window telling me to cut off the limbs. Okay, I got it.
Listen, forget about shooting him in the body. You gotta cut off the limbs, grab a cutter, anything like that.
It is because it's so different than the preconceived norms, I will say. So to your average like COD player, to a Battlefield player, to a Resident Evil player, right? This is just rehoming in that, hey, this is a little bit of a different game. You could argue redundancy, and I think there is a strong argument for redundancy, but I think it's serviceable. But I'm also biased.
Cut him apart.
Okay, 3 times the charm. Now let's find the next...
Be careful. Shooting them in the body didn't seem to work. Go for the limbs. Dismember them. That should do the job.
I understand. Everyone's telling me...
Nice.
Oh, come on. I get they didn't want players to miss out on this, but this is all within about 3 minutes.
I also don't play on mouse and keyboard. I play on controller on PC. So that's probably why I haven't noticed issues, but I might play with mouse and keyboard this time.
5 prompts in a row. You've only fought about 2 enemies by this point. It's unnecessarily heavy-handed, and that's going to be a theme here. It's an action horror game, so I'm going to take a look at the action first. It's pretty damn solid. As the engineer, your main task is to get the ship working again. The necromorphs aren't making this easy, but you have some weapons to dispose of them.
Right.
Instead of guns, most of your weaponry is mining equipment, but this is dangerous, future space mining equipment. They had an arm factory after all.
Yeah.
When gravity-tethered buzzsaws are part of your equipment, it makes sense to have an arm factory. The 7 weapons in the game each feel very different, and all have a multitude of roles you can use them for.
The biggest thing with the Dead Space weapons is they did feel like tools. You get to Dead Space 2, and they feel more like weapons, right? Like your pulse rifle feels more like an AR platform. Your plasma cutter feels, I would argue, a little deadlier. You get to the line gun. Even the line gun was actually really good with the little trip mine thing, the dubstep mine, right? Which, if you haven't, I did do a recent Dead Space 2 playthrough. It's up on the VOD channel. However, it is they did feel more like tools in this one. Your flamethrower was something you would use to like get rid of, like, I don't know, like a nest of something, right? Your plasma cutter was, for all intents and purposes, is just a tool that was to cut things. Your saw was, once more, to saw things, to rip apart things, right? Your force gun was the equivalent of a shotgun, a boomstick in the game. However, it was also one of those things that, like, it felt like it was used to clear debris. So in one, they did feel more like tools.
You can carry 4 at a time, so that leaves a lot of room to experiment. It's all about preference. The one gun in the game, the pulse rifle, needs a lot of ammo for these little enemies.
Yeah.
There could be a better way.
Yeah.
Or even better than that.
Force gun, yeah.
Each weapon also has an alternate fire mode, so depending on what you're carrying, it can feel like having 8 weapons. The variety in weapons is perfect for matching all the different enemies. If something is giving you trouble, maybe some new hardware will
All hail the dubstep mine.
do the trick. This is a bad mindset to have in real life, but here it's good. It's neat to think about the practical uses of these tools before they're being used to slaughter monsters. The pulse rifle does raise some questions.
That sure is an OSHA violation simulator 9000.
It's possible to just beat the game with the plasma cutter.
Yeah, it is.
So you'd be missing out all the fun and the variety. See, I got that bad.
Ugh,
man.
Twitchers.
Besides conventional weapons, you have some other tools. You have a stasis module that will temporarily slow enemies down. This is useful for getting out of a tight spot. You especially need it for dealing with level hazards.
Yeah, stasis is broken. Stasis is what makes the sandbox it's chef's kiss, next level.
Pretty handy. There's also a gravity manipulating kinesis module, also used for dealing with level hazards. It also manipulates small objects, so you can throw some explosive barrels at necromorphs. This is effective and it doesn't waste any ammo. Or throw explosive enemy parts at other enemies. Throw their own blades at them. Throw blades you find on the ground at them.
Hold up. No, I need to go back.
Or throw explosive enemy parts at other enemies. Throw their own blades at them.
Technically, you can do that in 1, but it's not the impalement mechanic from 2 forward. You can do it, but it's not as effective. 2, I would argue, has the most busted kinesis system in the entirety of Dead Space as a franchise. Even 3 was watered down. 1 remake felt a little balanced because you had to go for limbs, and it was not as omnipresent as it was in 2. It was definitely a little balanced. That should have been probably how it was. But yeah, Dead Space 2 has the best kinesis system in the entire game in regards to like throwing limbs back.
Throw blades you find on the ground at them. Why reach for anything anymore? This is your life now.
Yeah.
You can find health packs, ammo, and money by searching around the ship. Most ammo you find is based on what weapons you're carrying. This way your loadout won't affect your salvage rates. You always need to be on the hunt for the boxes and lockers. They're your lifeblood. This is another bonus for the breadcrumb system. You always know which way you need to go, so you can go another way.
Yeah.
There's no worrying about which way is the right way and which way is the explorer's way. The game tells you. On top of that, it only tells you if you ask for it. If you don't want directional help, the game never gives it to you.
I think that's the perfect way to actually go about this, though. Dead Space does solve the should we have a waypoint or should we not have a waypoint, right? Because I know a lot of people will kind of bitch at Oblivion for, we'll get fast travel, but I mean, fast travel's really relevant. Or, oh, well, Morrowind didn't have waypoints, but Oblivion has waypoints. It tells you where the damn thing is, right? I mean, having the ability to, hey, do you want a hint? Do you not want a hint? I think that's perfect. It allows for player choice.
Looking for health and ammo is a given, but there are a few other things to keep an eye out for. Every once in a while, you might find a new item, weapon, or armor schematic. These items can be brought to a store. Once it's there, you can buy the items. Then you go on the hunt for the money, or valuable items you can sell for the money. Anything you find can be sold. No trip is wasted.
Yep.
A better suit means more damage resistance and more inventory space. It always feels like a major accomplishment when you get some new threads. It's a progression milestone. You can make smaller ones along the way. Scattered through the levels or on tough enemies are power nodes. There's also an option to buy them at the store, but at 10k a pop, they're expensive.
Yeah.
If you find a workbench, all of your weapons, your suit powers, and the suit itself can be upgraded. The items are upgraded with a circuit system, so you might need 3 power nodes just to get the first upgrade.
Right.
So making your health bar bigger would
And
cost
always keep that 1 power node. If you've never played Dead Space 1, always keep 1 power node on you at all times. Trust me.
3 power nodes. But if you improve a weapon, it might cost less power nodes to get upgrades. A capacity upgrade fills your weapon with ammo, so it might be a good idea to wait until your ammo is low before upgrading your capacity.
I don't think the remake actually did that. So yes, this was a valid trick, and this was a valid trick in Resident Evil 4 as well. Because if you upgraded your capacity, you effectively got a free magazine refill with it. But in the remake of Dead Space, unless they've patched this, from what I remember, you would do a capacity upgrade and you wouldn't get the free ammo with it. So that was one of those changes that I had to scratch my head at.
At saving some money, I think it's a good system because you can't just rush something like a damage upgrade. You have to think about it a bit.
Yeah.
As an added bonus, it's not just numbers. When your weapon's upgraded, you get new visual and sound effects.
Flamethrower goes blue. It did get a faster rate of fire, didn't it?
There's also the option to spend a power node to open a power lock door.
This is why. Always keep 1 power node on you.
All been worth it from my experience. These systems altogether are excellent, but they work their best on harder difficulties. On easier difficulties, enemies drop more ammo and are more likely to drop ammo. They take less hits to kill. They dish out less damage and rarely dodge your attacks. All these systems work together because of scarcity. If someone's playing on easy, they can kill the enemies in a few hits.
Right.
They have more ammo, which means they can sell it for more money, and they have more upgrades. You don't need to scavenge as much, you always have stuff on you. It completely dissolves all the tension. As much as I love the game, it has a commitment problem. So now I need to talk about the horror aspect of Dead Space. It's not as strong as the action. Really good works of horror take a long time to build up tension. Dead Space has about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
The hell?
They do get into it right off the bat, pretty much.
I don't know. Something's in the room with us.
Jesus! Overfire! Overfire! Get the power!
One almost wonders if they removed this scene but they railroaded you into doing everything you did in chapter 1, right? And then off screen this happened, but you could hear it over the comms, right? If it would have built tension better. I think there could be a strong argument for that.
Come on.
I do like this sequence, but it's very apparent this isn't going to be a very subtle game. Listen to how much is going on.
Run, Isaac. Get the hell out of there.
This one is also a puppet. I think it hits you, but it hits you for negligible damage. All of this necromorph behind you is trying to do is to railroad you into that elevator. Hence, we get into that smoke and mirrors argument from earlier. There are a lot of smoke and mirrors that happen behind the scenes. This is meant to railroad you into this elevator to get you to start. It doesn't outright kill you from what I've tested.
I can barely hear myself think. The game feels so tense during the quiet parts. The problem is when the game does build up to something, it has to be as loud and over the top as possible. It's also very reliant on jump scares. The first time that I shot an enemy and it played dead, it caught me off guard, but I figured it out quick. I get that horror is subjective and something that scares me might not scare someone else. The issue here is using the same tricks over and over again. That looks kind of suspicious.
Sus,
he was
if
just
you will.
faking it. There's another one. Okay, this one has a spotlight on it, so let's check that out. Wow, they're really focusing on this one. Even if these things terrify you, you're gonna figure them out quick. Even that sequence in the beginning kind of lost its magic with me. It wasn't the sequence itself, but the game kept showing scary things behind glass.
I guess that is fair, though. So in this case, and I've gone over this one ad nauseum on stream. I'll probably go, because I don't have an actual recording of it, I'll probably actually go over this when I do my Dead Space annual stream this year. This was meant as a tutorial. So while there's the critique that everything dangerous has happened behind glass, and that is a recurring trope, this is to, without taking the player out of the action, because the player can move around in this cutscene. They can move here, the door over there, right? They can move anywhere they want to in this cutscene while this is happening. The reason that this is behind glass is to tutorial show you how this enemy works, because it starts like here, it jumps up there, it shoots his hand. Okay, we've shown that the enemy is pretty fast, it moves in a certain manner, it can hop up there, it fires a ranged projectile, and that's how it hunts. That's how this enemy moves. This is the captain showcasing how the infectors work, how it turns it into an elite slasher necromorph. It actually showcases the elites really early on in this game. This one I always was kind of like, meh. Yeah, this one where he gets hit by the brute. It's a cutscene without being a cutscene.
Now she awaits her transport.
Howdy.
What's up, bro?
I'm not even gonna test this one.
Sus.
A lot of the Ishimura is very tight hallways, so what happens is they'll be going down chasing an enemy, and then they'll spawn one behind you. I'm not going to make a montage of those because it's so constant, but basically whenever you fight, look over your shoulder, there's probably something there.
Yeah.
This is Benson. Everybody listen up. They're using the vents. That's how they're getting around the ship.
They're going to be popping out of vents a lot. Bursting out of
This
a vent
is truly an Among Us game of all time.
is their main method of spawning for the whole game.
Yeah.
I know the phrase "don't let them see the monster" won't work in Dead Space, but another method does. I get that the necromorphs are mainly based off of the alien in the movie The Thing, but there's some key differences in execution. Both necromorphs and the Thing are grotesque alien monsters.
Yeah.
Both of them appear completely in the light. But what made The Thing scary is that it was unpredictable. It had multiple
I actually haven't seen The Thing. I haven't really watched a lot of horror movies.
forms it could take and methods of getting around. The Thing didn't burst out of the broom closet every time it appeared. Dead Space is fully capable of making this work. It does it a few times.
Yeah. I do. As much as I hate the dividers, it was a really good scripted sequence. The Twitchers, yeah.
While it has all the issues I listed before, there's this one level I really like. It's all a build up to a boss fight. There are some necromorphs in this level.
This is hydroponics. Yeah, you have to kill the Weezers. You can actually stomp the Weezers to save ammo. The hydroponics, a lot of people do like it. Mining is probably my least favorite level because mining is what Mission 7. It's like hydroponics and the one before it, like in one mission in terms of length. Mining is rough. That's like, hey, cool, I'm gonna call it. We'll start stream 2 at hydroponics.
You don't see anywhere else in the game. The area is tinted differently and looks like nothing else in the ship. There's a long, quiet walk to it. You've only heard about this thing through audio logs and text, and you have no idea what to expect.
Right.
I'm not going to show it, but it's a fantastic build-up to the fight.
It is.
It makes me wish that more of the game was like this. What if the beginning was different? How about the glass scene never happens, the lobby is empty, and the team splits up? The player learns how to use the kinesis and stasis modules.
Oh, so you mean what I just said earlier? I'll take that Kip W.
Move around the environment. There's no blood or writing on the walls, it's just kind of quiet and creepy. Or is everybody? They recall you back to the lobby, and you're just walking down the hallway. What the hell was that?
Yeah.
It wouldn't have to be long. You could go to the lobby.
Which would actually lead into how the slasher got in that room in the first place. I mean, this story building does make sense.
Replay the glass scene like normal, but maybe a little bit of build-up would be nice. I felt more tense when the necromorphs weren't attacking me. That's spooky.
Skitter.
The combat is really fun and tense. I just wish some elements weren't so repetitive. The fact that you go back to levels several times makes this even more detrimental. It seems like the game can be edited down a bit and not lose much.
Right.
Quiet Dead Space and Loud Dead Space feel like two completely different games. It kind of is in a way. I read an article that explains a lot. When Resident Evil 4 came out, it was, no pun intended, a game changer.
Yeah.
The offset over-the-shoulder camera would go on to influence a ton of games. So you have a horror...
It really did. Resident Evil 4 truly was the nexus for a lot of, like, design decisions in modern games. Resident Evil 4 is iconic.
Title relying more on action elements that becomes wildly successful. When this happened in 2005, the Dead Space team was the System Shock 3 team. The team was so impressed by it, they decided to make their own Resident Evil 4, but put it in space.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating that. There was a lot of clunkiness in 4 they wanted to improve on, but it's safe to say without Resident Evil 4, there would be no Dead Space.
No.
The setting of Dead Space and the concept are very similar to System Shock, so that all makes sense. It's really not a hard stretch to make if you've played both games. System Shock is much slower than Resident Evil 4. I can't even say that I think one game is better because they're so different in how they're presented.
I've never played System Shock. I feel like one of these days I'll have to actually go back through System Shock, especially because 3's out now. And I'll get around to it at some point.
Completely explains why I find some parts of Dead Space to be really jarring. It's like one moment it's quiet, tense, and slow building, and then bam, you're in Resident Evil 4 mode.
Right.
There were a few parts where I felt like I could see it happening in real time. Like necromorphs would just be quietly stalking around with no music. Then one sees you and it all shifts.
Yeah.
There is a saving grace to this. If you can accept Dead Space as a haunted house ride, it's a ton of fun.
It really
because
is.
When they go over the top, they don't hold back. You can find montages that are only scenes of Isaac dying because they're just so well made.
Yeah, there is. There's actually been, as of recording this, in the past couple weeks, there's actually been like an uptick in like Dead Space 3 death compilations and death clips. I don't know what caused it. I mean, we're still a month out from October, so we're talking like mid-August. These clips were coming to light. But yeah, there's been an uptick in these. Yeah, they're also really brutal. No, I can't do it. Nope, can't do it. I can't do the divider. It's just too weird. I hate the divider so much.
Coming back from that. I guess my point is that there were a lot of ways they could have made it scarier, but they
hate the turret sections in these. I like how they did them in the remake, how they kind of did them a little differently. These turret sections were awful every time I went through. I'm awful at them.
didn't. At the same time, I don't think it's a huge issue because the game's fun and that's what it's all about. Don't play to be scared, play for a good time.
Yeah.
You can still pretend to be scared on Twitch. I also found the space part of Dead Space to be a bit of a letdown. You leap around from surface to surface with magnetic boots and you can't fly around in 0G. The camera can also flip out a bit during this. It's not horrible, but vastly improved in the sequel. As for the story, the character parts are kind of weak. Isaac is also trying to find his girlfriend on the ship, but he's a silent protagonist. I mean, technically he has some journal commentary, but I was way more invested in the mystery. I'm gonna talk spoilers, so go to here if you don't want to see those.
Right, no. It is a... people liked Isaac because he was a silent protagonist, and they really kind of shit on him in 2 and 3 for not shutting up. I thought it was great. And even in the remake, Dead Space remake, he had commentary. They even got, what was it, Gunnar right back? Like, excellent. It was excellent.
Are they gone? Thank God.
We have
Nice.
to assume that the colony's problems are somehow connected to the marker.
You can assume all you want to. I do not. The marker is glorious and divine. You know that.
As you progress, it becomes apparent that this wasn't a normal mining operation.
No.
Something was very off. Even before the necromorphs showed up, the crew on the ship and the crew down the planet were committing suicide, suffering mental illnesses, and other, red flags. As bad as things were getting, the captain wouldn't call in an SOS.
Yeah, something was clearly wrong down on Aegis 7.
Because it wasn't a
The
legal
extraction
mining
takes place on
operation.
Aegis 7.
But they didn't even call for help when the necromorphs were all over the place. Yeah, this is a really shady company, but they're not that shady. If something like this is growing on your wall, I think you need to make a few phone calls.
Yeah, probably OSHA, first of all. But there ain't no OSHA in space, so who do you call at that point? You can't call Ghostbusters.
Strangely enough, the military just happens to be in the neighborhood. So what's going on here? Dead Space has a powerful religion called Unitology.
Yep.
They believe life on Earth was seeded by aliens. They claim an alien artifact called the Marker was discovered on Earth, but the government covered it up. Well, you'll never guess what they found on the planet. A fresh, new Crayola red marker.
Yep.
Its discovery driving people insane or turning them into monsters is a bit of a test of faith for the crew. Not all of them are Unitologists, after all. The ones who are feel conflicted about it. Is it supposed to work this way? Is something going wrong? Or is this always how it was meant to be? So naturally you get some power struggles. It's nice that you could put a lot of this together on your own before the game outright tells you. I'm usually not a fan of scary graffiti, but if you want to be a serial box translator, you can figure out some elements early.
I did like that they did provide the cipher for this in game, because that's actually super cool.
I do like that being an option. But then the twist happens. The captain was sent there to retrieve the marker. The church and the company have pretty close ties, and so when a survey team found it, they rang the church rang the captain. The last captain just didn't have what it took. But then, triple twist. One of the repair crew members is a covert agent. The
Yeah.
marker on the planet is actually an artificial copy of the real marker. The government tested it on some barren wasteland world where no one would bother them. When it turned out to have issues, they made the zone off limits and buried it. The scientists altered the marker so that it would contain the necromorphs. That way the other undead scientists would be trapped there. But your crewmate wants to bring it back to the government and
I actually didn't know this part. I didn't know that they actually modified the marker.
leave you to die. Some of these beats are kind of familiar. Oh right, you do find out earlier that your girlfriend is alive. There's something suspicious about it, but I can't put my finger on it. Alright, she's been dead the whole time.
She's sus.
As much as I think the character elements are weak, I do like this one little moment here. It's not much, he's still silent, but hey, it's something.
This was definitely a large change in the remake, one which, I mean, I could feel people could argue was both good and bad.
Isaac tries to return the marker, but things don't go as planned. The whole game built up to this, and it's worth it.
Big boy. Also, the asteroid falling is a nice touch for this boss fight.
It was so worth it to be here.
Yeah.
This thing is amazing. The hive mind isn't the most challenging fight, but as far
No.
as the final boss goes, it's pretty incredible. Compared to everything else in Dead Space, the hive mind is on a completely new level of spectacle. You made it through everything else, now your reward is getting to fight the giant monster.
Yeah.
You escape the planet, get a jump scare, and that's Dead Space. Despite it having a lot of cliches, I enjoy the story of Dead Space. It's a very satisfying game.
It
It
is.
answers questions, but not all of them.
Mhm.
What exactly are the markers? Who built them? What's their purpose? Why does it make necromorphs? My theory was that it created more of the host race, but something went wrong with the process. After all, it's a
Not-
copy of the real marker. The necromorphs could be marker DRM. You better
It's not necessarily a wrong theory. It really isn't, considering what we know what the markers do now. I mean, it's not necessarily a wrong theory.
copy this illegally. Who knows? Beating the game unlocks New Game Plus, a new difficulty, and a bunch of goodies for your New Game Plus.
Yep. I love New Game
It's
Plus.
time to win the war.
Yeah.
Despite its flaws, Dead Space is a solid game, and I highly recommend it. Just remember to tweak your settings a bit. Next
Yeah.
time I'll be going over a game that I think is better than this one. I'll see you next time when Wait, I forgot to mention a secret. Dead Space has 12 named chapters.
Yes, it
If you put
does.
together the first letter of each chapter, you get a secret message. With that out of the way, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Rectifying course into tropic order. These are not the names, but yes, if you do, it was a well-known secret that if you took all 12s, all 12 of them and put the first letter, it actually spoiled the ending for you. Dead Space and games that I love. It was a really good piece. I actually really liked it. I was looking forward to this because I saw it in my feed and I'm like, I need to watch his Dead Space video. And we'll go through the series. I'm very happy with how it's going so far. And even then, clearly I was able to learn things today, was I not? I digress though. What did you think? What were your thoughts on Dead Space? What are your thoughts on horror versus thriller versus action? Let me know in the comments. Please keep it civil, and I will see you in the next one.